So finally, after all this time, we get to the long-awaited final battle with Captain Syrup, who it turns out this isn't actually our final encounter. The game pulls a fast one, especially since this game's 6 endings all involve getting one over on Captain Syrup and finally getting our treasure back, because the game began with her just rocking up to Wario's castle and stealing all his crap while he was sleeping like a true villain. Unlike the previous time that we saw Captain Syrup, she's actually fighting with her own abilities this time. And by own abilities, I mean that she rigged up some sort of flying saucer thing using her pirate technology in order to fight Wario with a room that is sporadically on fire. True final battle scenario, which is actually pretty good. The problem is that I think that when Nintendo Handheld went to this point of development, they kinda started overthinking things and it didn't really turn out as well as they would have hoped. Basically what I mean is that the boss fight is a bit too gimmicky for its own good, and it doesn't really work all that well because the thing that you need to do is not actually intuitive, and it turns into a really wonky puzzle boss fight. The basic gist of the game is that throughout the entire boss fight there is a constantly moving, in a pattern, fire pillar that's coming up from the floor to make things a bit harder. I think the fire pillar is actually one of the only ways that you could actually die from the boss fight and get ejected from the room, which isn't all that fun because if you do that then the fire is almost an insta-kill, which is just awesome. The bombs and enemies that Captain Syrup throws down into the arena really just act as distractions so that the fire can catch up. Obviously, there's another reason, because we still need a way to damage Captain Syrup. The way to do that is to take whatever the hell that she's dropping down and feed it into the fire. The fire will then rock up to the top of the screen and damage Captain Syrup, which is the gimmick part that I was talking about, and the thing that doesn't work all that well, because the boss fight itself doesn't really tell the player that they're supposed to do that directly. Honestly, even in a game as limited as this, it wouldn't have been too difficult to have explained that mechanic to the player. They could have done it in an intro cutscene bit instead of just showing us Captain Syrup opening up her UFO and preparing for battle. There was definitely a way to do that, so it's disappointing that we didn't get the proper fully rounded experience of the boss fight. And the other thing, and the more obvious problem, is that the fire pillar thing is a very obtuse way of attacking Syrup, and unfortunately it's our only way of attacking her. The main issue is that since the fire pillar is moving slower than Captain Syrup herself, the times that they line up are completely random and not decided by the player. But they need to be constantly moving so they don't die from the fire, and they need to line up the enemies themselves. But with the delay between being able to throw an enemy and them actually hitting the fire and then the fire racing up to Captain Syrup, that's a few too many seconds where she can easily just move out of the way. Which means that timing this is incredibly difficult due to the limited space of the arena, which means that either the protagonist or the antagonist can get to the other side of the room incredibly fast, which doesn't marry well with the mechanic that they were going for in this boss fight. Ultimately, it just ends up more annoying, especially since after a while, she will stop just dropping enemies on Wario and turn dropping bombs on him, which I think explode on impact, which means that you have to pick them up in midair, which is just confusing at the best of times. And it may also fall into that problem that we discussed in several other boss videos that are getting into this late stage of the game, where the bomb, if you pick it up, and it's really easy to mispick it up because there are very little animations in this game to show that you did it correctly until you actually have it in your hand. The bomb can hit you on contact and probably send you into the fire pillar just off of the fact that you need the ammunition to eventually kill Syrup. And then the usual problem where Captain Syrup in her rage state will start speeding up, making it even more difficult to hit her dead on, which really just turns this game into a match of hoping that the RNG is on the player's side before they end up dying and having to throw their controller through their old CRT monitor. My feelings toward this final boss fight reflect the original time we fought her and the genie from the original Super Mario Land 3, which also was wonky and way more complicated than the console could handle, wasn't explained very well, and almost just add up the exact same way. I'm hoping that the other Captain Syrup boss fights in the optional chapters can start fixing this, because as it stands here as a conclusion, the Captain Syrup first boss fight is not exactly my favorite, and a real drop of potential for a developer that was so prolific in quality design as Nintendo handheld. So seeing them make these rookie mistakes in something that could have easily been implemented to fix the problems is just disappointing. But that's kind of been the tone of the entire Rogues Gallery of this game. Lost potential, could have done better, disappointing across the board. The saving graces of this game were found elsewhere, unfortunately. It was still a good game, it's just that its boss fights really didn't turn out to be all that worthwhile.